What's a good word, everybody? Finally here, finally made it. Apologies for the delay. I'm a popular man at work when things are breaking around here, but it's been a minute. It's been a minute. I wanted to chat combine news and kind of recap and break down a lot of what was happening from there with you guys. I know I've been trying to share some more intriguing stuff that I've seen in small pieces from the combine already. Um, Compensatory pick updates that we had, et cetera, et cetera. But let's kick it off with probably just the overall impression of the combine, right? So I've seen a lot of stuff that's come out about the running backs running the fastest 40 times that we've seen, right? The cornerbacks, the safeties running the fastest 40 times that we've seen. It's been maybe the wide receivers being a little bit more shocking, especially near the top of the group with some performances, not only athletically but within the interviews, etc. That may cause them to go later in the draft than many people predicted. It's the quarterbacks. It's the whole gambit, right? The universal message that I keep seeing here about this draft class is it's the most athletic class that we've seen in quite some time. Let me see what this is real quick. I can look at that later. So I'm excited. I'm excited for one, right? When we want to take a look at the quarterbacks, I think the big news is obviously around Taylor Green, right? Taylor Green, I think Ty Simpson are probably going to be the biggest winners of that general piece. With Ty Simpson is the interviews. From what I heard, obviously he chatted about meeting with the Jets. He talked about loving the organization, or at least the group that he met with, and of course saying all the right things you need to say when you're trying to get employed by somebody and trying to bring in the biggest payday that you possibly can. But from what I heard, he was extremely impressive in these interviews when it comes to getting up there and doing things on the whiteboard, when it comes to his memory recall, how he's presenting his answers back to the leadership groups. And that kind of stuff matters, right? When you go back and you hear about like the Tom Brady's and the Andrew Lucks of the world and some of these guys, the Peyton Mannings that were operating on a completely different mental plane than anybody else when it comes to manipulating the defense, when it comes to being able to walk out there on the field, put your back to a defense, and you can go in there and know exactly how things were going to play out for yourself. That is a different kind of skill set. That's a different level of preparation. That's a different level of training. And even if you don't have the physical qualities that make someone say walking off the bus, this is my guy, a number one overall draft pick, those mental traits are things that can help you dominate within the league, right? Look at your Alex Smiths, look at even your Cam Newtons, right? Obviously, he had a little bit of both. But look at anybody of that vein, whether they had the athletic gifts or not, that were really able to go out there and survive for a number of years throughout the league with the evolution of the defenses and how they tried to attack them in various ways. Those guys survived, they produced, they excelled based on being able to go out there and film review, do the whiteboard work, etc. So I don't think it moves the needle as if, Ty Simpson was chucking 80-yard bombs during his combine throws or anything like that. But it is a piece where you say, we finished getting through his collegiate career. We feel comfortable about maybe he's a lower tier round one prospect, right? But we got into the combine. We got to actually talk football with him. This is a guy where we don't have a complex scheme, right? It's, complicated enough, but we can give our playbook to this guy. He can digest this full thing in year one, and he might not be able to maximize it, but he can go out there and run an effective offense. How valuable is that to us based on what we think we have available in free agency, based on what we think we may be able to obtain through trades if we want to go that route? And how do we get that within the building, right? So I think that's going to be the key question with him. With Taylor Green, though, it's I don't want to say the complete opposite. That's kind of disrespectful. But With Taylor Green, a lot of what's happening around him is what people are calling the most athletic combine by a quarterback in NFL history, right? It's the vertical leap, it's the broad jump, it's the 40, sub 4.4 time, it's the 6'6", 30-ish build that he's out there, doing this with. And the immediate names that are going to jump to the top of people's mind is, oh, this is a Cam Newton, this is a Josh Allen caliber player in terms of the athleticism. And clearly nobody's wrong, right? I don't know where he would fall in the, thousands of players that have been evaluated over this combine process since it kicked off in like 1999 or whatever it was. But you have to imagine he's probably looking at a top 5, top 10 performance based on what he was able to do out there. It's everything else, right? With him, it's all the question marks about what's the mental piece, right? What is the reason why you haven't seen a true breakout performance or a breakout season specifically from a Taylor Green, right? It was a level of competition. Was it he didn't have a run game around him? Was it the passing weapons that he helped develop, but he never really had a top tier guy? Was it the fact that he doesn't look comfortable as a passer, right? Is there hitches? Is there problems with throwing motion? Is the fact that the scheme didn't really complement what he can do well? Did they try to pigeonhole him? There's a ton of stuff to do. The real question from a Jets perspective is, and I am of the opinion we need to try to draft somebody every year until we can get this thing figured out, which means the management of the resources and how you construct these rooms are super important. But Taylor Green, did his combine performance move him out of day 3 range? If the answer to that is yes, the New York Jets have a problem, right? Maybe there's other guys they still like a Sawyer Robertson or something that will be in that area. But if Taylor Green moved himself out of round 3, he's not a guy that I would want to trade resources to go up and get, because then that puts you in the same predicament as if you just, drafted Ty Simpson at 16 or someone in the second round or whatever that looks like. There's going to be pressure to make sure that they see the field and that you make that work, even though you may end up reinvesting, more resources in the following draft. If you can get them on day 3, even if it's at, near the top of the 4th round, then the Taylor Green conversation comes. This is enough an investment that we want to, let's just say a goal by year 2 is he needs to be the backup quarterback, or year 3. He can become a backup quarterback by year 3. We think he has starting level traits. If he does see the field due to injury, due to whatever other reason, stealing a job, what have you, can he make enough noise to where we say, all right, there's legitimate starter potential. Obviously, he has all the stuff that we love. Let's go full in, right? Let's continue to build out that offensive roster. Offensive line's in a really good place. Let's make sure Garrett Wilson and his Robins and all that kind of stuff are locked in. Let's go out there and, maybe you start looking for your version of a Kenyon Sadiq or, your Tyler Warren, whatever it is that looks like. That is a lot more palatable, and it's a lot more favorable of a situation for even the quarterback that he knows he's not walking through the door and all eyes are immediately on him to save a franchise, right? Which is essentially what we're looking for, no matter if we're finding this guy at pick number 1 or no matter if we're finding him at, pick 257 or whatever, Mr. Relevant is. So I do like the idea that if you're going to go back and figure out this room, you get, and I've said this for a couple months now, maybe, but 2 veterans, right? Maybe it's an Andy Dalton and I don't know, Kyler Murray is going to come extremely cheap now, right? So maybe you do a Kyler Murray and Andy Dalton, and then you go and you put a Taylor Green in that room, right? You have Kyler Murray, who should be able to at least give you some space and room to breathe for a year or 2. He's going to give you legitimate NFL play and production at the quarterback position. You have Andy Dalton, who knows, and I don't know where he is in his mind in terms of thinking whether he's still a starter. Is this more of a Joe Flacco or is this really more of, a Tyrod Taylor situation? You get you an Andy Dalton who's played high-level football before. He has a ton of experience. He is your de facto mentor, which I actually like a little bit more than having a Tyrod Taylor necessarily. If you can if you can get an upgrade from a Tyrod to a Jacoby Brissett, I think that's a plus, right? Even having the Kyler Murray conversation, not expecting him to be a full mentor, but that's great. But I like the idea of having a guy that is more so coming from the frame of mind that he's operating as a pocket passer. And so the details, the principle, the teachings he's going to give you are the immediate areas of weakness for someone like a Taylor Green. And maybe that helps advance, accelerate the learning curve for someone like that, as opposed to the dual threat guy who's going to be teaching you like, here's the situations where I'm looking to take off or I'm looking to buy time and I'm doing that. That's not the focus of an Andy Dalton, right? He's telling you how to read the defense. He's showing you how to get the footwork down in the pocket to where, you can dance in there. You can still make your reads. You can still make your throws. And again, someone like a Taylor Green with the 6'6" build, he's not going to have the problems like a Kyler Murray of having to see over the offensive line and having a lot of these other issues that are really just going to be hindrances. So I would love to get our hands on Taylor Green, but I think it does come with the caveat that you have to be really intentional about who you're surrounding him with in that quarterback room. And it just so happens to be beautiful that we do have Lucas Musgrave, right? Who, if you want to attach quarterback guru to him, it's not coming in the classic sense of that he turns all of these guys into all-stars and Pro Bowls and stuff like that. It comes with the caveat that his history, and he has done it, right? Derek Carr being the prime example, but Bill Musgrave's experience is I can make a rookie a manageable asset on an NFL roster. And that just in and of itself is premium territory, right? So maybe Taylor Green never does become, the pinnacle of the NFL and your Josh Allen type, your Cam Newton type for the time periods that they dominated. But maybe he becomes your realized version of a Justin Fields or something like that. And I've seen the conversations about why not just keep Justin Fields as the same kind of guy, yada, yada. I don't want to hear any of that. It's not even in my frame of mind. We're talking about different guys, and you're talking about different situations. You're having a rookie contract versus the $40 million you went and gave to Justin Fields. So completely different. In the running back room, I think this is really the most kind of ambiguous situation, I feel like, because you have Breece Hall, who you kind of expect to come to a long-term deal. I don't think anybody's actually going to try to, give him a contract where they'll have to give up their 2 first. If so, chef's kiss to Darren Muji. But I think we're going to work on an extension, or if he does play on the 1 year, it just makes sense to keep that caliber of player in the building. But, career year for him, it didn't look that great. 1,000 yards is 1,000 yards. So you're talking about a offensive coordinator in Reich who's shown he knows how to utilize his running backs previously to a pretty high success level. So you imagine there's going to be an easier time getting him involved in the passing offense. You have Seth Ryan, who's going to bring a lot of the creativity. He'll be able to demonstrate a lot of what they did with their Jahmyr Gibbs and their David Montgomerys. And I'm forgetting my guy. Used to be Jamal something. The anime nerd guy that used to be a running back, led the league in touchdowns a couple years back. But you get a guy that knows how to use these running backs in very creative ways, very efficient ways based on their skill sets. But Braylon Allen's coming back from a significant injury. You still haven't really seen Isaiah Davis find a defined role. I think we all like the aspect of him kind of becoming that Ty Simpson-esque person. Doesn't necessarily bring the same, athletic traits and stuff for that. But in the small sample size that we've seen over these last couple of years, Isaiah Davis has been the most consistent and effective running back that's in that room, which says a lot to me. So there's stuff to work with, but I think it really comes down to how confident is the new coaching staff in these guys not only being able to stay on the field, but also, realizing, again, some of that potential and not just being sour grapes around, previous regimes and how things have worked out. Harlan Tyson, I have seen y'all make some noise in here. Appreciate y'all coming through on the fly, considering the changes and all that kind of stuff. There are running backs that I really, really do like from this combine, though. And I think a lot of these guys will probably be available with maybe compensatory picks if we want to take a shot out there. For example, specifically, maybe if we have, the 2 7s that I talked about from the video today. But I like a lot of these guys. I also think a lot of these guys, unfortunately, end up making it to UDFA territory. And so if we're going to continue to try to invest in that room, go to UDFA approach, right? I think the room is solid enough that you can make a case that you can get you someone that may still bring starter level traits and ability, and you kind of get your pick of the litter after you make your case. The wide receiver room, I think, is where things get kind of chaotic. So Carnell Tate didn't have necessarily the best combine. I think a lot of people were making more fuss about the 40 time than necessarily anything else. I thought I saw something about a Jets trade. They've been making more noise about his 40 time, right? I think he ran like a 5.47 or something like that. Many people thought he was going to be in the 4.4s. The film looks like it. Even the way he ran the 40 looks like it. So I've heard something referred to as like the time gate with him. But Carnell Tate didn't do well. Mekhi Lemon, apparently he bombed all of his interviews. I was going to do a video about that probably for tomorrow, maybe a short or something. But he's falling way back into the rankings, right? And then you have Tyson, who the injury history, right? He couldn't even make it to the combine. He's probably going to try to figure out something for the pro day. But like your big three of the names that were mentioned out there, all still credible talents, but all three have also demonstrated why there's going to be, some hesitancy about maybe taking them in the top 5, the top 10 now. And so you do have this potential, right? Connor Rogers just dropped some of his mock drafts from NFL SE, and I think it was Carnell Tate still available there at 16, right? A crazy concept a couple weeks, maybe even a couple of months back. I think for me, it's more of a question of managing the draft, right? The impact players that you're getting, I think you're going to get them at all 4 picks, even if the names that get ran up, to the announcer aren't the names that we want, right? Let's say I'll throw the craziest ones that are probably out there. Let's say we get a Caleb Downs. Let's say we go for who would be at 16 that we probably wouldn't. So let's say we do Caleb Downs. Let's say we do like Keldrick Falk at 16. Let's say we do, Ty Simpson at 33 maybe. And then at 44, we take who's a popular pick that I have seen there. At 44, maybe it's like CJ Allen or someone like that, right? Probably unrealistic, but just mentioning, right? Those 4 names, all of those guys are still going to be impact players. They're probably also going to be awesome for the Jets in the early running if Aaron Glenn gets to, coach things and develop these guys up the way that they're expecting to. But there's going to be a lot more names now, right? This is just the aftermath of the combine where these guys or certain guys are going to be available to you that you just it wasn't even fathomable, right? And then there's going to be guys selected in these slots where it's like, where was this significant increase from? And we never truly know, right? A lot of us are just kind of working off of the consensus knowledge of what we think all of the NFL experts and connections and dots that we're seeing are. But for example, maybe a Sonny Styles is, our truly second ranked player in this draft above like a Jeremiah Love and a Caleb Downs, etc. I wouldn't be mad at the Jets taking him number 2 overall, right? It's all perspective, and ultimately none of that really matters. It comes down to the on-field results. So we'll see. What I'm getting at when it comes to the wide receiver room is I would almost be more comfortable no matter who's there at 2 or 16 potentially waiting until the second round, right? A lot of the same conversations around any of these guys you could take at the same pick is more so we've seen them produce, but they also have some level of athleticism that makes them a difference maker. You can still find that going deep into the second round. And so we might not get the guy or the priority guy for us that we could have got with some of those first round picks. but I think you still have a really awesome selection that you can get, and you still have faith in the coaching staff to be able to go out there and try to turn Adonai Mitchell into something, or you get you a comparable guy in the second round. And again, resource management, I think ultimately is just kind of what I'm thinking of. You can get you a proper wide receiver probably going into round 4. And at that point, it's more so how many of these guys are we considering to be a number 2 caliber player, right? We don't need to go out there and find the number 1. It would be awesome. I wouldn't be mad at it if we do. But can you get an impact player somewhere else where it matters more, where the fall off might be more different, right? You go from your Sonny Styles and your CJ Allens and stuff that you think could be the middle linebacker, the top linebacker in your room, a leader, the green dot, wearer, as opposed to, hey, if I don't get these guys in the first round, if I don't take them with the first pick in the second round, I'm not going to have a chance until the 4th. And all of these guys we maybe think are, LB3s at best for us is something you really want to consider. Casey Concepcion, yeah, he was the player that I think everyone's making a fuss about when it comes to the stutter that he had, right? I think he's extremely talented and all that kind of stuff. I would love to see him on the roster. I don't think, as much as I want that X caliber receiver type guy, I don't think we necessarily need to pigeonhole ourselves from just getting a really good slot guy either, and saying, Garrett Wilson can kind of strictly live on the outside, but we also know Frank Reich has designs to kind of use him all over the place. We can swap them in and out. We can really just present the most versatile route runners across the NFL if we pick up a guy like this, right? There's a lot of narratives and perceptions that you can run with something like that. Would you consider Styles at 2? I would 100%. I think he's definitely hit that territory for me. And that's without me even getting a chance to really run through my full review of him. I've touched on a couple different players. I'm going to start releasing more of my breakdowns again, probably starting, what's today? Wednesday. So if not tomorrow, then by Friday, the next one will drop, which I think I'm still on the edge rushers on. But yeah, Sonny Styles is firmly in view for me. Tight end, I think we can wait. Like if Kenyon Sadiq, the combine he had was ridiculous, but if he's somehow there for whatever reason with that first pick in the second, like I think you obviously leap on that. I think there's definitely a conversation to be had at 16, and it more so just it's a matter of what are we going to prioritize, right? Like, do we have designs that the tight ends will be more productive in a Frank Reich offense, or are they meant to just kind of create more stress on the defense? I don't know, right? It also, I think the Mason Taylor evaluation needs to happen with this coaching staff where they say, is this really just a solid overall caliber tight end? He's not necessarily going to be elite as a receiver or as a blocker per se, but he's just solid and steady across the board in all aspects. And we would love to be able to keep that for 7 years. Or are they going to say, we think he can do more, and so we don't need to invest? Or we can also go and get that truly, pass catching option as a tight end. And if so, you don't need Kenyon Sadiq for that necessarily. You can go and get you a Jolly or the Stanford kid or someone like that is kind of built in that way for that to matter a little bit more. But if you just want to get everybody's hands in the dirt and attached to the O-line, and you just give off these same looks and do something slightly different in a bunch of different, variations of those formations, then yeah, go get the guy that is going to create instant matchup nightmares for everybody, right? I think that's a perfectly acceptable plan. The only issue will be, regardless of where he gets picked, is that people will have the Kyle Pitts conversation where it's, if we have designs that he should be a strong pass catching option and he doesn't live up to that, let's just say he lives as like a 600 to 800 yard, like 55-ish catch type tight end per season. That's upper tier. But if you draft Kenyon Sadiq in the first round, I think you want him to be like the top 5 guy at his position. And I don't know. I would probably say more realistically top three, because they're going to look at the athleticism. They're going to say, if there is not that top tier production, why aren't you winning more of these matchups that you should, and all that kind of stuff. Um, but we'll see. I think you continue to add to that room no matter what. I just don't think it necessarily needs to happen in those first 2 days. But again, I'm not mad at it. As long as Kenyon Sadiq isn't the second overall pick, I think you could talk me into it at any of the other spots if he happens to be available to us at 33 or at 16. Yeah, he's and it's not even the 40, right? I think when you just see the way, which is why, looking at a guy in person is so key. When you just see a guy that you can obviously tell is moving different in person, that changes your entire perception, right? That becomes such a different conversation around why does this or does not match the film and all that kind of stuff. And I'd love it. I think ultimately you can't go wrong by filling your roster with a ton of athletic freaks that at the minimal you can say are football players, and maybe they aren't technicians at their position. But if you can get athletic freaks that just know how to win or just know how to play football, you'll find a way to make that situation work. If Muji can trade for Grenard, I did see he was available. Taking Reese at 2 will make the front 7 elite. Yeah, so you have Grenard, you have McDonald, you have Briggs, you have Sweat, then you have Reese. And if we are truly switching to a 3-4, that means you have Will and Reese coming off the edge. You have probably Briggs as the initial nose tackle with the formations I still got to kind of think through and work out in my head. Maybe you have a combination of Jawan and Sweat out there at some point with like Reese out there on the line who can hold his own on the edge a little bit more than someone like a McDonald would. But there's a lot, right? I think ultimately if you can look at them and just say, I have options with this defense now to create havoc, it's a win. I don't know if I would – Greener isn't a bad option. I'm wary about trading the resources when this is also such a deep edge class and you can just say, here's the traits that I want. I know I can go find this, once or twice. And having the proven product is always a plus. But I don't know. I'm not mad at it. I wouldn't be mad at it. Take the Enderman at 16, and if Simpson isn't there at 33, I consider Beck on day 3. Beck scares the crap out of me. I don't like highly volatile quarterback play. Like there shouldn't be you can't have stretches where for 4 games you are a top 3 player in all of college football, and then for the next 4 games you might throw a pick every 4 to 6 passes that you put up. And then you start trying to press the issue and you start trying to make yourself do things athletically that you aren't just really a fit to do. And you stop trusting yourself and all these other things happen. His resume speaks for itself, right? But we've seen a ton of guys with 1,000,001 accolades, 1,000,001 awards, 4,000-yard seasons and all this kind of stuff, rewriting school record books. And these guys come out and it's like you question if they ever played football before, right? And I could see Beck being a closer situation to like a Quinn Ewers than to anything else, which, even on day 3, I don't know if that's something I want to sign up for, but like, support, subscribe, got you. Appreciate you, my guy. Yeah, I know I'm just riffing on this, which is funny that I do these lives in this scenario because I always hate doing this. And talking because I get tired extremely quick. But where else are we at? The O-line, I'll be curious if we just go traits based or anything, right? What happens with AVT? What happens with John Simpson? In some crazy world, do you take the Penn State kid at 16 if you don't like the way the board breaks? there's definitely other options that you could probably look at even on day two that maybe make a little bit more sense. I think the one narrative I kind of disagree with the O line is we're still in a good place no matter what, right? Like we can lose AVT, we could lose Simpson, and the depth and the starting ability will suck to lose there. But if you look at the Texans and what happened like 2 years ago, even, it's not that they had all of the pieces necessarily that we did, even, but there was enough on paper that they should have did better than they did. And it was specifically, I think, either the left guard, it might have been the right guard, but it was specifically one player that was letting up pressure, that was letting up sacks at such a ridiculous rate that it literally killed any opportunity that they had to put out a functional offense. Running backs getting hit consistently in the backfield, CJ Stroud getting touched up, almost immediately every play. Nothing failed to work, and one guy ended up causing that. So you do need to find an adequate replacement. But I think that's really all you need. You need someone that can just borderline play the position, and then you can take a shot somewhere else, right? Whether you don't need a pure guard. You can get you a tackle convert or someone of that ilk, right? Maybe on day three somewhere and kind of figure that piece out. But I don't want it to necessarily be an afterthought either. But I think a lot of this stuff can probably be solved in free agency to where you do just take a shot on somebody on day three and, you feel really good about who you brought in. I also still like our what do they call them? I like our international, our IPP guy from last year. And, we still have plenty of fillers and rotations out from last offseason on that. So I feel really good there. The defensive line, I think, is really the key question. It almost feels like we're going to do something on the line no matter what at number two, which is why I'm really excited to kind of run through this mock draft again Thursday or Friday, because I have some designs on what I specifically want to do for this team with those 4 picks. And I'm sure there's a lot of chaos and stuff that'll come from that. But to me, Bailey is a reset of Will McDonald right now. He's probably a better version of Will McDonald, but Will McDonald at his worst, as he's progressed anyways, is last year, which gave us, 8 sacks or whatever it was. And yes, that was all between like 2 games. But if his floor is I only impacted 2 games, but I did it to this degree and I'm getting you 8 sacks, when Carl Dunbar gets his hands on him and he makes him more effective across 17 games, then you're probably talking about a legitimate, consistent 10-sack guy. Do you want to hit the reset clock on something like that? 100%. But I don't know if it's worth having David Bailey and a Will McDonald on the same team. Like, if that's the case, just trade Will McDonald and figure it out with David Bailey. So for me, the conversation really ends up, if you want to go defensive line, is it going to be Arvell Reese or is it going to be Bain? And I think Bain has won so consistently and so dominantly, regardless of the arm length. And I'm sure I could probably pull this together somewhere, which I wanted to do for his breakdown video I did. And it's a little bit of a project, but I'm sure you can look at everybody that he went against, take a look at those arm lengths and take a look at where those guys are kind of projected to be at. And he's beating out consistent first, second round guys. And so he's doing it in the SEC. He's doing it against guys that already are athletically beating him out. Yes, there's going to be more technical masterminds at the NFL level, but I think he looks to me like a guy that's going to get the better of the majority of the people that he come across. And I don't even know if he's the kind of guy that'll be completely phased out of the game. Maybe he only ends up making the one impact play instead of making a handful of those per game when he's matched up against like a Lane Johnson or someone like that, for example. But considering it might be a true 3-4, not a true 3-4, considering it's a 3-4 with some multiple fronts and stuff out there, I like the idea of kind of having that heavier guy that also ends up becoming like your JFM because he's going to reduce on the interior and do a lot of these other different things. I like the idea of potentially having him out there. And yes, you're going against the grain and you're going against what the analytics and all that kind of stuff says, but I feel like you have just as much opportunity to make him versatile with what he's going to do at the line of scrimmage as you do with Arvell Reese that may bounce back and forth between being on the line and being in space. Who do you think is going to be the more consistent winner? Bain has done it more consistently. Arvell Reese, of course, as everybody's mentioning, maybe has the ceiling to break out and get to that same level, but maybe do it at a higher, pace. So I'm intrigued. I think it's a win no matter how you go about it, but it'll be interesting to kind of see how the staff may have worked through some of those conversation pieces. I'll take Jennings Dunker Mullet. Yes. Yeah, I've seen him as kind of a popular guy in a few mock drafts, not from analysts, but just kind of from fans out there. We got the cap space. We can sign AVT on a high incentive contract and still draft a guard. That's really where I've been at for maybe like a month and a half now. I feel like AVT shouldn't be let go. I went to the extreme of we need to kind of have him on like the Tyron Smith deal, and it maybe doesn't need to get that crazy. But yeah, I think it's a low enough guarantee. Like give him a starter's level guarantee. I don't know what that looks like off the top of my head. Maybe it's like 7 to 9 million, somewhere in that range. And then you lower the guarantee over years 2 and 3, and you give him all of the incentives based on playing time or starts, etc., for him to recoup a lot of that money that's just not guaranteed. I think it'd be a completely different conversation if we looked at him and said, we have legitimate question marks about you when you're on the field in these scenarios, but generally when we've had access to him, the dude's a baller. I want him on the team. Sonny Styles should be the second pick, best pass rusher at 16. Styles is the best player in this draft. Not name. Yeah, I from everything I've been reading and putting together from my profile of him, which I can't wait to drop at some point next week. The guy has my vote, right? 15 years from now, I'd probably give him my vote as like a future president or something too. Like I'm really loving all of the additional bits of information that I'm finding out about Sonny Styles, and I can't wait to share that, at least with my general community that checks out the channel, for some of that stuff that I'm sure people just haven't, necessarily caught on to yet or haven't seen with, all the various spots that information can be at. I get it, the Styles had a great combine, but do we really know the Styles can be effective on the edge? I don't even think he needs to be, right? Maybe he just ends up coming across as like the Quincy Williams-esque player that when he does rush, he's so effective that he's going to get you, let's just say 4 sacks a year, right? Maybe he has, 50, 60 rushing opportunities. He converts 4 of those into sacks. He's pressuring guys on, a fourth of the other ones. I consider that a pretty good deal. And then he's going to give you everything else from the linebacker role when it comes to, shut down coverage, being an enforcer, making sure everybody's on, moving in one step in unison as a defense. We're not being caught off guard by stupid stuff. I will sign up for that because it's rare for you to find that upper echelon. I had names that came to mind, but let's say like you're not going to find you necessarily your Zach Frazier's or what's the old Panthers guy that I can't seem to, hold on, this is going to drive me nuts. Luke Kuechly's, right? Your Luke Kuechly's and Fred Warner's and stuff like that of the world, is harder to find those, which I think he has a legitimate chance of becoming, than it's going to be for you to find an edge. And my thought process is thinking a year in the future as well, right? Maybe you don't love the fact that you lose out on a Reese, a Bailey, a Bain, but those are going to be the same kind of guys that potentially will be available or better next year when you have 3 firsts, and you might not be having this same conversation about someone like a Sonny Styles. So to me, I throw out all of the conversations about cap space and where he starts, where he ends up ranking at as a rookie, immediately coming into the league and all that kind of stuff. We need brothers back on the team. Go get. I did see his brother, which I didn't know his brother also played on the same team. I think he's kind of purely in that undrafted free agent territory. I'm also not really bought into, yeah, he ran a sub 4.3, I think it was, but I don't know enough about him. And the fact that I haven't heard his name prior to the combine doesn't give me much expectations that he's going to be like a really, really good dude. A good player immediately, or at least by the end of his rookie contract. So we'll see. Styles gives me Vernon Golston bias. Disrespectful. Disrespectful. I think there's a clear difference, but I remember the Vernon Golston situation and like scenario, but I never paid attention to it that much as a fan at that time, right? I was more so like I was hardcore in the fact that you couldn't talk disrespectfully about the New York Jets around me, but I was casual in the sense of I watched games when I had a chance. I didn't really pay attention to a ton of team moves. I just knew to lock in on who the 53-man roster was. And the draft was never like a super huge deal to me at that time either. So maybe I need to go back and see. I'm sure Vernon Golston was talked about as like a legend in the college realms when he was getting drafted. And obviously the combine itself was ridiculous, but yeah, I don't know. Actually, that'll probably be a good exercise for when I do the Sonny Styles breakdown. But off the top of my head, that sounds like insanity. Yeah, both Ohio State. I did see that for the Styles brothers. So that does bring us to linebacker. So I guess that would be the dependency, right? So what we're looking at now, and keep in mind, we still think that nobody is potentially safe from being traded. So you have Quincy, who I believe is in that free agency territory for us. You have Jamian Sherwood, who he's still under contract with us, but he underperformed so bad last year, and we don't know how much of a change, the potential 3-4 switch would make his duties. And if you can get out of that contract, I think you try to jump at that. But then you don't really have much behind him, right? You have Maui Goa. You probably have who was the other guy I'm trying to think of that we were rotating with that kept getting injured and doing dumb stuff. But like the simple fact is you don't really have the linebacker unit to pull off having a 3-4 just yet, either from an athleticism standpoint or for how you plan to deploy these guys. And so it almost feels like it requires a heavy investment, not only in free agency, but also the draft. And maybe that heavy investment is just taking a guy at 2 or 16. But it does feel like you need to kind of reinvent that linebacker room. And I know Alex Anzalone is an option out there, and I've heard people talk about Leo Chenal and all that kind of stuff. I think that is just kind of like a required move. And then you also need to make sure you're subsidizing it with, the draft and taking a significant person at that point. And also someone that's not necessarily moonlighting as a linebacker, which would be like the Arvell Reese piece in my mind. But we'll have to see. Take Reese at 2. Take Rodriguez at 16 if you need linebacker. Rodriguez I love, but at 16 feels rich. I don't know if he lasts to 33, right? So that's part of the problem, but I don't know if someone could talk me into taking Rodriguez at 16. Because if you can do that, then just take Kenyon Sadiq at 16 or take, Falk at 16 and make sure you still shore up the front 7, or take, I don't know, Carnell Tate at that point, or Mekhi Lemon or whoever it is that falls from like the big 3 at wide receiver. There's more impactful players I think that you can grab. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. It'll be a good discussion for the mock draft live. Where are we at cornerback? That's probably the most appealing because I feel like we've seen this organization under AG and Muji probably invest the most resources into like doing tryouts and pulling guys in and pulling off trades and doing drafting. Like they're going through literally every avenue, waiver wire pickups, all that kind of stuff to get the caliber of cornerbacks and the traits at cornerback that they want into that room. So I don't know if we take a guy in the first. I don't even know if we take a guy in the second. But it also wouldn't necessarily shock me either if, like, we heard what's the guy LSU's Mansour Delane or something like that. It wouldn't surprise me if at like 16 we seen his name card on there either, and they're like, we want to make sure we absolutely are getting the back seven together. I think I'd probably hate the idea, but also, again, when you come out of a season with zero interceptions whatsoever, I can imagine the knee-jerk overreaction is get all of the guys with the high-end traits or the high-end production that you possibly can in there to get that fixed up. Um, and then at safety, I'm just more curious of how much value does this team put at that position. It feels like it's kind of been on the back burner since we invested in like Jamal Adams and Marcus May under Todd Bowles. Ever since, outside of who's our highest guy since them, Ashton Davis in the third, maybe a year or two after that. Anything else has really been like, I feel like it's been mostly all UDFAs maybe. But right now it's really Malachi Moore and it's everybody else. And I'm a guy that still really loves, I love me some Jarius Monroe, and I'm hoping he can find a way to get himself a key role on this defense this year. But like he got injured in preseason, and so there's question marks with him and still having to learn, and now the new scheme and stuff like that too. But we'll see. I'm also curious about special teams, more so specifically at the kicker spot. I did see yesterday that it was confirmed Nick Folk will be returning for his 19th or 20th season in the NFL. So I know we've been trying to prepare for potentially losing him, whether he retires or something else. But knowing that he returns, do we make a huge push to kind of bring him back? I don't know how that plays out, but I don't think you want to tamper with special teams too much. And that was really the only reason why potentially have a job even right now if you're Aaron Glenn. So we'll see. We'll see. I think I definitely still have a ton of specific combine related stories to put out. And that was the kind of the intention of what this live was going to be, but I definitely thought I was going to have more time and all that kind of stuff. I'll probably drop off in 5 minutes here for, getting back into work and that whole thing. But I don't know. It's smokescreen season, obviously. So I think everything that we are specifically hearing about right now, there's a little bit of truth. There's obviously probably some misdirection going on. Like one of the key things, and I'm sure this story will drop tomorrow from my channel, about us reaching out to like every potential available free agent safety during the combine process, like stuff like that. I can't see just being like a complete, milk dud of news. Seems like something that'll probably be very vital for us. That zero interception narrative, I think, is overblown. We had guys that dropped will be interceptions, even with zero interceptions. We still, and yeah, I'm 100% on board with that. Right now, the interceptions is zero interceptions. That speaks to me that whether it was a technique thing, whether we just had guys that don't really have the hands or the instincts, that's something that could have and should have been solved for. But I also think that like when I remember people initially talking about it when maybe we were like 6-7 weeks in, I'm calling out specific examples from me just watching highlights, right? It's not even that I got a chance to look at the all 22. I'm trying to think who it was initially. But like Malachi Moore even, right? Malachi Moore, off the top of my head, dropped at least 3 or 4 interceptions. And this was stuff where he was having a chance to snatch something off of the sideline. This was a tip drill that was up in the air. And like, because guys have this whole, probably drama in their head about how we're interceptionless, they're just jumping into each other and doing dumb stuff instead of making sure they can secure the ball and communicate. And so we're dropping super easy picks. So, realistically, and every team could make the same argument, but like if we look at all the drops, you probably could have said we would have had like 12 interceptions off the top of my head for realistic and expected footballs that we should have grabbed, whether it was guys making plays or just pop-ups or the errant passes and stuff like that. So definitely overblown, but I do think this is a situation now where it's like, hopefully Aaron Glenn's influence really changes a lot of that. And, we'll see. Yeah, I can't imagine this thing being repeated by us, at least, fingers crossed. What do you think about Chris Bell, wide receiver from Louisville? Wasn't Chris Bell the dude that got injured, though? I know to answer the question, I do remember liking him a lot. Based on what I saw, but let me make sure I'm not thinking of a different guy real quick. Let's see, rankings. Wide receiver. Okay, this isn't giving me the full list that I want to look at. Let's see, Tyson, Lemon, Tate, Boston, Concepcion. Yeah, I think I'm thinking of the same person, but maybe I'm thinking of Chris Brazzell. But I thought one of those guys got injured. Either way, if it's the person that I'm actually thinking of, I was pretty high on them. And I also thought I remembered expecting that they were going to be there at 33 for us. And so it didn't necessarily matter, but yeah, I don't have an official answer off the top of my head because obviously I need to go and still look at these guys. But for me, the go-to guy that I'm kind of looking at right now was Malachi Fields. That's kind of the guy that I'm really locked in on specifically. But we'll see. It's just the first person that I really took like an extended look at. But I appreciate chopping it up with you guys. Again, I'm going to finish looking at my calendar before I get out of here today because I think tomorrow I should have my lunch available again, like a full lunch instead of stuff getting crazy. So if that does end up being the case, tomorrow I'm going to be dropping, or tomorrow with all of you, I'll be going through the 2-round mock draft. Which should be really, really fun. I'm interested in all the conversations. Hopefully some people jump onto the live and, they cuss me out about the moves, or we have some good dialogue around kind of the thought process around that. But I appreciate you guys entertaining me on this, random Wednesday that we're on and coming to kick it with me. And I'm looking forward to catching you guys hopefully tomorrow. So if so, you guys will see it out there before I knock out for the night tonight. And let's get going with it. But I appreciate you guys. Hopefully enjoy the rest of your days. I'll catch you tomorrow. Peace.